In the spring of 1946, the Texarkana region was continuously plagued by violent attacks targeting couples who were out on secluded dates during weekend nights. Over a span of 10 weeks, from February 22nd to May 3rd, 1946, 8 people were attacked, 5 of whom were murdered. The contemporary press dubbed these incidents as the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. The first attack occurred around 11:45 p.m. on Friday, February 22nd, 1946. After watching a movie, 25-year-old Jimmy Hollis and his 19-year-old girlfriend Mary Larry parked their car on a deserted road known as a lover's lane. 10 minutes later, a man wearing a white cloth mask, resembling a pillowcase with eye holes cut out, appeared at Jimmy's driver's side door, shining a flashlight and threatening to kill them if they didn't comply. He ordered both to get out of the car, made Jimmy take off his pants, and then struck him on the head with a gun. He also struck Mary with a blunt object, forced her to play a game of chase, and sexually assaulted her. After the attacker left, Mary ran 800 meters to the nearest house for help. Meanwhile, Jimmy regained consciousness and flagged down a motorcyclist, who called the police. Within 30 minutes, 4 officers arrived at the scene, but the assailant had already fled. Jimmy and Mary gave differing descriptions of the attacker. Mary claimed that under the mask, she saw he was a light-skinned African-American. Jimmy said the man was a sun-tanned white male, about 30 years old, though he admitted he couldn't distinguish the attacker's features due to the flashlight blinding him. Both agreed that the assailant was around 6 feet tall. The police didn't believe Mary's account, suspecting that the couple knew the attacker and were covering for him. No suspects were arrested. On Sunday morning, March 24th, 1946, Richard Griffin, 29, and his 17-year-old girlfriend Polly Moore were found dead in a car parked on the lover's lane by a passerby. A blood-soaked patch of ground next to the car indicated they were shot outside and then dragged back into the vehicle. A shell casing was found, suggesting the bullet might have been fired from a revolver wrapped in a blanket. The police conducted an investigation across the entire city, interrogating more than 200 people and detaining 3 individuals with blood-stained clothes, but all 3 were eventually cleared of suspicion. Around 1:30 a.m. on Sunday, April 14th, 1946, 17-year-old Paul Martin picked up 15-year-old Betty Jo Booker after a music performance. Paul's body was found at 6:30 that morning with 4 gunshot wounds lying on the side of the road. Blood was found near a fence on the opposite side of the road. Betty's body was discovered at 11:30 a.m., about 3.2 kilometers away from Paul behind a tree. She had been shot twice with a .32 caliber Colt automatic pistol, the same type of weapon used in the Richard and Polly murders on March 24th. Paul's car was found 2.49 kilometers from his body and approximately 4.8 kilometers from Betty's, with the keys still inside. Authorities were unsure who was shot first. The autopsy revealed that both victims had undergone a brutal struggle. The next murder occurred at a 200-hectare farm shortly before 9 p.m. on Friday, May 3rd. Virgil Starks, 37, was sitting in an armchair reading a newspaper when he was shot twice in the back of the head through a closed window. Hearing the glass shatter, his wife, 36-year-old Katie, came from another room and found her husband dead. As she ran to the wall-mounted phone to call the police, she was shot twice in the face through the same window. Katie fled out the front door after hearing the killer at the back of the house. She collapsed at a neighbor's door and was taken to the hospital. The string of murders led the police to mobilize forces across the entire area, but there were very few leads. They speculated that the killer might be a sexual maniac, as no money was taken. The police attempted to lure the killer by recruiting teenagers to act as decoys in parked cars along secluded roads. Officers also volunteered as decoys, either with real girlfriends or mannequins, but none of these tactics yielded results. On May 11th, the police urged the public to report anyone who had been inexplicably absent on the nights of the 4 attacks. They offered a $500 reward for information after the first murder, and by May 13th, the reward had exceeded $10,000. The police were hesitant to link the murder at the Starks' home with the previous crimes, as the weapon was believed to be a .22 caliber automatic rifle. By November 1948, authorities ruled out any connection between this case and the earlier two murders. Authorities did not initially connect the first attack to the murders. The Richard Polly killings raised public concern but were regarded as an isolated incident. However, after the Paul Betty murders on April 14th, the public began to fear the possibility of a serial killer. Curfew was imposed on businesses to prevent people from going out at night. It was around this time that local media began referring to the presumed serial killer as the Phantom Killer. Panic grew after Virgil Starks' murder. The media continuously reported on the police investigation. On May 5th, the Texarkana Gazette declared that the Phantom Killer could strike again at any time, in any place, and target anyone. Within a week, the police were flooded with reports of prowlers, though most turned out to be the result of imagination and excessive fear. Previously, residents often didn't lock their doors, but now they equipped themselves with locks, guns, and even nailed shut windows and hung curtains. The day after Virgil Starks' death, stores sold out of locks, guns, ammunition, and window coverings. Many people sought window locks, door hooks, night latches, and guard dogs. Fear spread to neighboring cities, causing gun and axe sales to soar. After 3 weeks without any related murders, Texarkana's fear began to subside, and the panic died down after 3 months. Police concluded that the perpetrator seemed to be a deranged individual and a firearms expert. Dr. Anthony LaPala, a psychologist at the Federal Correctional Institute in Texarkana, believed that the killer was between 30 and 50 years old, likely driven by strong sexual desires and sadism. LaPala stated that someone who committed such crimes was intelligent, cunning, and often avoided capture. According to LaPala's theory, the killer wasn't afraid of the police, but was aware that attacking on secluded roads was becoming increasingly difficult, so he shifted his focus to a farm. The murderer acted alone, did not confide in anyone about his crimes, and could suppress his urges to attack and kill. During the investigation, hundreds of suspects were arrested. 9 people confessed to being the killer, but their confessions did not match the facts. The primary suspect identified was Ewell Swinney, a 29-year-old car thief and forger. He was arrested in July 1946 after police discovered that on the night of the Richard Polly murders, a car had been stolen in the area, and a previously stolen vehicle had been abandoned. Police arrested Ewell's wife, Peggy, when she came to retrieve the car. Peggy provided a detailed account, claiming that Ewell was the Phantom Killer and had murdered Paul and Betty. Her story changed in some details during interviews, and police believed she was withholding information either out of fear of Ewell or fear of being implicated. The police had substantial circumstantial evidence against Ewell, but Peggy's confession was the most crucial part of the case. However, Peggy later retracted her confession and was deemed an unreliable witness. Additionally, she could not be compelled to testify against her husband. Law enforcement officers tried to verify Peggy's confession and link Ewell to the murders. They discovered that on the night of the Paul Betty murders, Ewell and Peggy had been sleeping in a car under a bridge near San Antonio. Ewell was never charged with the murders. Instead, he was tried and imprisoned for car theft. 2 of the lead investigators on the case believed that Ewell was guilty, and the 2014 book The Phantom Killer, Unlocking the Mystery of the Texarkana Serial Murders by James Presley, also identified Ewell as the perpetrator. The Texarkana Moonlight Murders have become legendary mysteries, inspiring numerous works, including the hit film The Town That Dreaded Sundown, 1976. In February 2020, the FBI released over 1,000 pages of archived documents from the investigation online. Today's case story comes to an end here. What are your thoughts on this case? Please leave a comment below so we can discuss it together, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest cases. Goodbye, and see you next time.